On this episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, we're going to be talking about stepping up or stepping out. Now, Rebecca Plant is a business performance and accountability coach who works with leaders, CEOs, founders of high-performing businesses. So, what is stepping up or stepping out? Are you the blockage in your business? Are you the one that needs to step up? Or are you potentially even looking to exit your business one day, create an asset and step out? So, stay tuned. Listen to Rebecca Plant about all things leadership. Hello, everybody. My name is Pete Liston, and welcome to another episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast, where I'm talking with Rebecca Plant today. G'day, Rebecca.
Hello. Great to be here.
Well, I have to admit, 2025 was a great year for me, and we went like leaps and bounds forward with the VBC, and part of the reason for that is connecting with great people, and meeting you and your husband Ed was really a highlight of last year, and I've been hanging to have a chat with you on the pod and learn more about you.
Hanging with my husband is a highlight for me too, and it has been for the last 17 years plus. So I'm happy to hear that other people also enjoy him and his company.
Look, the essence of what we're doing here is just connecting good people that love business and love to talk shop. So, hey, let's go right back to the start. Where did you grow up, and what was it like?
I grew up on the Gold Coast, actually, which is where we live now with our family. Ed and I have two young men in training in our house, as well as a male dog. I am very outnumbered here, which is quite amusing because I grew up in an all-female household. So I'm one of three girls, the youngest actually, and with a single mum. So what I have experiencing now versus what I experienced when I was growing up here on the Gold Coast is very, very different. It's very loud and very chaotic.
Yeah, look, the Goldie is somewhere that would have been one of those like magic, iconic, idyllic places. You know, were you a beach girl?
I was. However, it was a lot of bicycling from my house to the beach. I was never I was never a really good surfer. It was sort of like school holidays, again, as a single mum, child of a single mum. I would just get palmed off to whoever was around, usually my aunt, and she would pack us all into the car, throw the surfboards on the roof, have an esky full of sandwiches, drop you at the beach for the day at Snapper Rocks or Rainbow or Fingal, and be like, I'll pick you guys up like at said time, whatever time that was in the afternoon. So we would spend a lot of days just teaching ourselves how to surf. My cousins knew how to surf, but I would teach ourselves how to surf, hang about, be in the sand, on the water. So yeah, I did grow up a lot on the beach.
Summertime in Australia, so like literally as we speak, my wife, who is a late life surfer, is out there at the beach with my little boy who's at surf camp on school holidays, with my other little boy who's just probably cruising around on his boogie board. So they're smashing the beach life while I'm here working.
And funnily enough, we now live in the valley though, right? So we're 15 minutes drive from the beach, but we live on acreage. So I'm at the moment looking out to trees everywhere. Even though I live on the Gold Coast, we actually live in the bushland, and it is magical because I do ocean swim. So it's a little drive down to get to the beach, but I get to come back and see no neighbours and have the peace and quiet that acreage affords us here on the Gold Coast. So I do think we have the best of all the worlds.
And having the privilege of been to your place before, I can attest it is absolutely gorgeous up there. But hey, talking sport and being active, you had a bit of a sporting life in a former life?
Yeah, so I was having a little thought to myself about surfing back in the day, and I'm now 6 foot tall. So people often, one of the first things, Pete, and when we did, the veteran conference last year, a lot of the people that I met, one of the first things they always say is, wow, you're much taller than I thought you were, because most people just experience me like this, on camera or sitting down, online somewhere, and surfing was much easier for me when I was younger and shorter. Now I'm long and gangly. I kind of went through a period of being 14, 15 and significantly grew. So if you understand the game of netball, I was the centre court player until I reached 15s. And then my coach at the time just was like, either end for you. Just pick an end. We'll just put you down there. You have no use of your arms and legs right now, and we'll just work out how, what to do with you as you kind of learn what to do with your legs and arms again. So I did, yes, play a lot of sport and was very active, and got myself around to lots of different trainings, cycled my way around town to get to training. But I did play netball, and I played netball starting here on the Gold Coast for Palm Beach, down at the Mallowa courts that still exist there. And then worked my way up to play for State League, then into playing for Queensland in my later teens and 20s as well.
Because all of these things, add building blocks to where you are and what you do today. But how did you get involved with the military community? How did you, get in touch with people like us and join us?
So my netball story actually continued on overseas, because I then I moved to the UK in my mid-20s, like lots of people do, lots of Australians do, and lived in London for a few years. And I was playing for a county league team over there. And when I came back from that, I was actually on my way from London back home to live. I went via South America, and I was walking the Inca Trail, and I got stuck by myself on this horribly hot, dry, dusty passage. And all I could do to keep myself going up to this very, very steep hill, which to the top is named Dead Woman's Pass, if you've ever been in that area before. And all I could think about was I just was counting 1, 2, 3 to 20 over and over again. And then all of a sudden these things started popping into my mind, questions like, what are you going to do when you get there? Who are you looking forward to seeing when you get home, and just things. And it arrived to me that I had never actually played in the National Netball League, which is what I'd wanted to do, even though I'd represented Queensland. And so when I came back here, I moved back to the Gold Coast. It felt wrong. I had a sister whose husband was still in army at that stage, living in Canberra, and they'd had 2 babes since I'd left and moved away. So I went and lived down with them. Well, I didn't leave. I went to visit first, but when I got there, I just was like, I think this is where I need to be now. So they opened their doors to me, and I moved in with them. So my actual connection started off with my brother-in-law, who was in the army, and my sister earlier was also served for 10 years too. So I had, my sister and had some interaction with military. But when I got there, I lived with them for some time, and then it got a little bit too much. So, a late 20-year-old woman pursuing netball, I'd reached out and got myself an in with the Canberra Darters at that time to join the National League. So that was kind of ticked off. So I was moving through the motions, and I went, I can't live with my sister and my brother-in-law and their 2 children. It's kind of getting in the way of my social life. So I was like, I need to find somewhere to live. And then my brother-in-law mentioned that his mate, who's my now husband Edward, was coming in to do staff college the next year into Canberra. And so I thought, you guys get pretty great benefits in housing in Canberra. It's really expensive. Could you ask him if he wants a flatmate? And he said, no. Ask him himself. And I said, oh, gee, all right. So I had to ring him up. I had to ring Ed up, whom I hadn't spoken to for many years, and just kind of say, hey, did you want a flatmate? Long story short, we ended up becoming flatmates. We found a little house in Narrabundah, actually, which we used to call Robbabundah, because if you have known Canberra at all, it can be a bit dodgy. But we moved in there, and then that was we started out friends, and then not long after we became a couple, and that's 17 years. That's the story. But so yeah, I was working and playing a lot of netball, National League at that time, and he was doing staff college, which he always jokes about it being a 6-month course crammed into 12 months. So I kind of got the experience. I thought that military life wasn't too bad. I thought, you guys don't work that hard. And then he got out of staff college, and then back into working normally before he got out of military. So I kind of had a couple of years of being a military spouse.
Well, I can't believe that you didn't have to do like, I'm thinking from Ed here, he didn't have to do the Mooseheads thing. He didn't have to like take you out on dates that much because you're just at home. It's like flatmates with benefits.
He did have to take me on a date, actually. So the first date, he's very sweet, and he's going to kill me for telling you guys this, but he was very sweet. He had preloaded the fridge with a bottle of champagne and had left the house knowing that I would be coming home from work. This is our first ever date, coming home from work. And so he said, I'll pick you up at this time. So he disappeared and until about about 6 o'clock or whatever. And the next thing you know, I hear the front doorbell ring. And there he is at the front doorbell with a bouquet of flowers and there to pick me up for the date, and said, I think there might be a bottle of champagne in the fridge for us to drink beforehand. So he had preloaded the fridge, he'd left the house, rung the doorbell, and came as a real gentleman.
No.
So he didn't do moose heads, but he had to do dates.
So how long ago, like, not trying to delve too much into your personal life, but how long were you guys together as flatties before, like, there's this bit of sparkle, like it's just a great dynamic.
It wasn't long. It wasn't long at all. It was probably about 2.5 months, actually, which,
that's long.
yeah, and part of that time he wasn't even there for, so, it was 2.5 months of flatmates. But yeah, we kept separate bedrooms for, quite a time, and get the occasional, this is kind of when texting was just new, but it's just like, oh, I can hear the alarms going off across the road. Did you need me to pop up there to make sure that everything's okay? And I'm like, I'm good, thank you. I'm very safe here. So yes, it was about 2.5 months.
Ah, that's tops. Hey, where did you start your corporate career? So tell us about, you obviously succeeded at a very high level in your sports. What about from a career perspective?
Yeah, I got into journalism actually as my first career, and to this day I will meet journo friends, and not one of my girlfriends that I kind of did journo times with still works as a journalist. They've gone into other things, but we are continually grateful for the skills that we got in that industry. But yeah, I worked at a newspaper here on the Gold Coast actually as my first career. So I went to university to learn to ask questions, and then I got a degree in asking questions, and then I got paid to ask questions for a living. But one of the excellent things that I really learnt out of journalism, and that still served me to this day, is actually really looking at the angle for something. So when I'm working with people now, I talk a lot about communication choreography, or choreographing the communication that you're going into. And that is, it still ties back to those early journalism days of just understanding what is it that you want to say, and what is the story that you want someone to get out of this. For me, it was reading something and making it really simple so that someone can understand and grasp onto. So those early days of journalism were fun. They were wild. It was a News Corp organisation, so there was plenty of money in the the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was a fun time to be in journalism. And you still did have journalists. The social media wasn't around, right? So we were kind of a different industry. And then I left there and went over and worked in London. And in London, I really began working in communications, and I worked for a multinational asset management firm inside of their technology department actually, and my role there was in communications for tech. So I would have to take all the techie stuff that these guys did on servers and new software, and make it actually sound interesting for board members, and to obtain more kind of funding and attract new people into it, and then also teaching communication software. So that was quite a learning curve over there in the UK. And then I came back and worked in non-profit PR, which is when I met Ed. So I was working non-profit PR in Canberra. That was a really lonely time because I wasn't in defence, and I wasn't yet embedded in defence. So I didn't have friends that, of the wives friends and all the things. Yeah. I had netball, which thankfully was a real saviour. But I would find that every time I'd go to a party in Canberra, the first question I would get asked is what I did. And then I'd say I work for a non-government, non-profit organisation. And usually doors would just get shut and people would turn around, and I was not interesting at all. Because I did find that sector was very much about like who you know and who you can who can help you get to that next level. So it was a very kind of lonely experience for me there. So lucky I met my husband.
Instant family to the military life. It's a couple of things that's sort of making, look, we've only met a few times and it's been a real pleasure to get to know you. But one of the things that is, I think, pretty clear is, I hate to use a swear word, but no bullshit. You know, cut to the point, cut to the right question. And when you were talking about your journalist career, is that where some of that came from? You know, as being able to really articulate and getting to the point of a problem quickly?
I would suggest that's a big, that gave me confidence to ask a question. I feel like if I go back to my girlfriends from high school or people that knew me, I think they would always tell you I was pretty direct and straightforward, because my grounding was in, if I wanted something, I needed to go out and get it myself. So I mentioned that I was the youngest of three in a single mother household in the 80s and 90s. There wasn't a lot of money around, right? So it was a kind of like, who do I need to know? What do I need from them? What information do I need in order to fill in the gaps to get to where I want to be next? So I believe that that's a grounding, that characteristic that I offer really is a grounding in my own upbringing, in addition to understanding how to ask a question and formulate a question to get the response that I would desire, or that I'm hoping would give me the next piece of information.
And where did this essence to move into executive coaching, support, you know, and really unlocking people's potential come from? Was that pre-ed, or is that something you guys did together with the Business League? Where was the seed of all of that come from?
So I realised I kind of skipped a piece, right? Like I told you about all the jobs I worked, but I forgot to tell you how I actually got here to what I'm doing now, how I have been doing for the past 15 years. In that period of coming back, and I painted a real rosy picture of what it was like for Ed and I to move in together and live and get together, and it was wonderful, and I was playing National League. But I also had high functioning anxiety at that stage, and there was a period where I was suffering up to 8 and 9 panic attacks a day. So I was quite disabled from the perspective of, there was about a 2-week period I couldn't even work while I overcame that anxiety, while I understood what it was all about, while I sought counselling and coaching to really unlock what was causing this. And so that really took me into a path of personal development from there. I was at that stage 28, around 28, 29. And anyone who's into astrology, numerology, that's the time that Saturn returns. So that's the period where a lot of people feel that they're being asked from something bigger than themselves to review their life and have a look at what are the influences that have brought you here, and what are you still holding, and what needs to be sorted out. So I then immersed myself into personal development, and then found myself working with a success coach or performance coach, which was helpful for my netball. But then also I was like, well, I'd like to learn those skills as well, because if I can come through this, and these learnings have helped me to be able to stand up in front of a crowd and speak, to show up in a room authentically again, to have an intimate conversation with someone, to speak about something that's important to me, to ask the question, to not care about what someone thinks about me, to lead other people to where they want to go, to go, well, that's an ideal. Well, why does it have to be an ideal? Why can't we make it that thing? So those were the sorts of questions that I was like, well, I've done this and I know what it's like to actually come through this, so I'd like to go and do that. So I spent 2 years, and actually Ed, after I'd been along to the first kind of workshop and course for this, he was like, that looks really cool, I'd like to come along. I took him along, and we ended up in our first 2 years of relationship doing that together. So we were both working jobs at that time, but really grounding ourselves with some incredible communication tools to be able to speak to one another, because we have worked together now for the majority of time that he's been out of army, and we've also got married and raised children, and I still love him, and I still look forward to being around him, and to have that level of closeness and relationship I'm forever thankful for that time, because it gave us great grounding and foundations to be able to talk about important things when they arose, and still now, you know, what's he must be out, I think it's 15 years now, for coming on to 15 years around that, and you know, we still experience things that were from military times, right? So like, there's still emotions that he might experience, or moments where it will have been triggered by something that occurred during his years of service. So it's given us an ability to speak openly and honestly about what's behind what's arising. So if there's anger, if there's sadness, you know, all of that stuff can be spoken through. And so in that time of working, I realized that like that's actually what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be helping people be high performers, but just not high performance in terms of the accolades, the teams, the job promotions. I wanted them to be able to perform for themselves, and whatever that looks like. And so I got out of, made the leap to say I'm leaving my job and starting something on my own. And I did start by doing some communication coaching for people and some consulting. And then all of a sudden just kind of started working with some of the people that I was resonating with were also requiring some small business communication stuff. So I was doing flyers and doing messaging for them, having background in PR, grounding in communication was helping me to go, well, this is the message and this is what we need to get out. And then this is how we can do that. And then at the same time, that would coaching their confidence through that too, and giving them frameworks to be able to, have the business that they want, but also then to be able to communicate it effectively and have confidence. And so from there, that was kind of the initial bit. And then Ed and I, fast forward to that, then ended up on the Gold Coast again when he got out. We did what a lot of small business people did. We started to go to networking events and join groups. And then we were approached to take on one group that was an independent group, not affiliated with any of the big brands that you see out there. Because they were like, well, we want to kind of get out and we need some people to come in and take it on. And we were hoping that you would do that. At that time, I was 8 months pregnant with our first child. And I kind of was like, well, yes, we can do this, but we'll need some help. And so we went into, growing that, and that was the Business League. Well, actually, at that time, it was called Ask Ernie Business League, because it was run by this local dude at a leagues club at Burleigh, and he'd just grown it out of, Ernie, I think, was his dad from memory. I'm so sorry, Bryson, if you're listening to this and I'm getting it wrong. It was just like, you got a problem, ask Ernie. So we grew up from being Ask Ernie to the Business League, which then became a premium business community for people on the Gold Coast that would come for events. We would bring in speakers, multi-million-dollar speakers, platform speakers, people with not just business, but but we also did like a sporting series. So the Gold Coast Sun CEO came in, the Titan CEO came in. I had Netball Queensland CEO came down. We had the guys at Burleigh Brewing, Black Hops when they were, at their peak. Lots of kind of big brands that were here from the Gold Coast, Stone and Wood, CEOs come and chat with us about business, and it's giving people really an aspirational aspect to go, oh, that's what's achievable, and then also giving them a community at the same time to go, this is what, I'm not on this, I'm not on my own here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so from there, then it grew into, I think I interviewed probably 40, I was thinking about this on my walk this morning. It would be in excess of 40 multi-million-dollar business owners in that time that I interviewed. Not just, there was times before we even started an interview process that was just they would come and chat and speak. But then it got to a stage where we could get better names and get bigger business people in if I would just interview them for that experience. So I did, about 40 plus multi-million-dollar business owners, plus the guys over at Go One, Vutran, who's a double unicorn business. Just really understanding what it was like to lead organisations, grow teams. And while we were growing community, we also would be coaching people who were not just wanting to get more business, but then the people who were into the scaling part, who had a bigger business, who had teams, and then supporting them through leadership and continuing to grow from there.
I want to go 2 steps forward than I'd planned to, but then I'll come back again.
Sure.
I want to talk about your, executive accountability coaching and what you do with senior business owners. But you were talking about interviewing all of these highly successful people. Are their problems that much different to ours? Let's just say I'm putting my hat on as a under $1 million in revenue owner. So I've got 5 staff. I've got complexities. I'm doing. What is the differences in those senior business leaders versus us who may be struggling to find our way? Are they same problems, different problems?
They're different scales, right? Like I haven't met an 8, 9, $13 million business who says I'm happy where I am. Like I still want more business. So attraction and retention of customers is always a challenge. The difference is from when you're in under million, you could potentially be doing that on your own, and so you're having to do attraction, retention, and strategy for that, as well as delivery for that, as well as the strategy of where we're going to go next. So all of the parts are there, but when you're on scale and you're doing multi-7 and multi-8, you have other people to support that thinking, and your job becomes about bringing them with you to help them achieve what you want. Whereas when you're by yourself or smaller team, you have much greater impact to take yourself where you want to go. Whereas when we step into a leadership role of others, we have to be able to influence them and communicate and articulate where we want them to go and what we need from them for us to be able to move forward and go where we want to go. So there are, that's the same, right? Like we have to be able to always communicate and articulate how we can benefit someone. So that stuff doesn't change. But, in terms of where your focus as a business owner changes, it becomes less about the small strategy of getting people in the door and more about how do I get the people who are now here working for me to do that heavy lifting to where we want to go.
I want to share a little bit about my experience and where I came from. So I came out of army and I didn't know anything about business. I was passionate about business, but we just cuffed it, learned a lot of mistakes, and we joined a couple of business communities, and I sort of found that the key things that were missing for me were marketing, sales, cash flow, and accounting. Some of the true fundamentals of that attraction and retention of customer. Then the business became successful, but then when we hit about, I guess we're sitting about $3.5 million of revenue a couple of years back, I found that I was trying to create solutions for things that I'd never experienced before. Okay, and even though that military head of mine was like, yep, I can do this, I can bring up a problem, it was actually a massive deficit for me to, whether it be like overconfidence, to think that I could solve these problems, that again, I'd never been there, I'd never seen it, I'd never done it. And one of the best things I ever did was be able to get out of the business and actually hire someone who had immense experience. And in those first couple of weeks that we started working together, he was like, everything that I thought was a massive, almost insurmountable problem, he was just like, oh no, I've seen that before, I've done that. Don't worry about that one, I've got this. We were lucky that we had the ability and the cash to hire a senior CEO straight away to do that. But it's not the case for everyone. And I think this is where coaching is critical, about having that fractional asset, having someone who can guide your accountability, can guide you to where you need, because where do we learn this stuff? Now, you need someone who's been there and done it, I really think, to untap your own potential. Where do you sort of see the limitations of people accepting coaching in their own self-belief of where they're going?
I mean, that's a really great question and a really big one, Pete. And I think that, are you talking about at what point does someone have to accept they need help?
Well, at the first step, I guess it's where do we stop grinding and just trying to drive this business forward on the weight and the energy of our own shoulders and our own energy. Whereas ultimately, are we the ones who are actually the blockage in releasing this thing to its full potential, then allowing us the financial freedom of what this thing at its full potential could actually be for us?
I love that use of the word potential, because when I go in, you know, as a partner, performance and accountability partner to these founders and leadership teams, it really is about what is the potential of the business. And by the potential of businesses is where do you want it to go? What can you see is available to it? Like, what could it do? If it was, what's possible? And so when we're understanding what's possible, there are a couple of things that we have to understand. Well, like, one, who's going to do that work, and by what timeframes, right? Like, well, okay, well, we know what the potential is. By when do we want it to be achieved? And so that's actually a piece that lots of people miss in even just that small thing of going, well, like, by when do we want to achieve it by, and then put it out there. It's amazing how in those, as you talked about, those early years, and thank you for sharing your experience, it's just kind of like, I just want to know where the next dollar is. But at some point it's like, well, I want to know what the next evolution is. And that evolution is not just for the business, but for yourself.
You know, one of the things that I really resonate with what you talk about is step up or step out. And for me, you know, it was a rather confronting thing to have to pay someone twice as much as I was getting paid. But I don't want to sound like, but I'm actually, that decision has allowed me to do VBC full time, and my financial return from that business now is far more than I was making when I was actually in the business, because I've let my ego go. But I'm not saying everyone should be ready to step out, but too often in business, we're like, well, what is the end state? Where are we going with this thing?
Yeah. So in 2023, Ed and I had a team of 10 working for us inside the Business League, and I was, just as you were speaking, general manager. I was marketing. I was still front-end sales. I would run our events. I was the in-house journalist. I was still at that stage of just doing all the things, and we had a team doing that, and it was one of those, like, not something that I could see this now, but I couldn't see that when I was in it. But I had a team of people doing things that they were really good at and that they enjoyed, and I was doing everything else. So I burnt out doing that, and my ability to continue just all of a sudden stopped. On Friday I had a team of 10. By the Monday I had a team of 0. I said, I can't do this. I had been unknowingly making a bunch of processes redundant, you know, leading up to this. But I just walked away. I had to dust my hands off and go, I can't do this anymore. I wish I had not have done it that way. But at the time, I was so burnt out from doing everything, of feeling like I was carrying it alone. Now, I wasn't carrying it alone because I had my husband there with me, but he had a particular role in our business, and he was the main coach, and I did the culture and community, right? So like that's my bag. But to even hold that, there was 88 clients in the business at that point. To even hold that was a lot. Now, I had I had someone like me, and we always, what is it? What do they say about referees? They umpire because they can't play. It's kind of like, right? I coach this. I'm the partner and coach for people with this stuff because I once did it really badly. But I learned from it, and then I was able to see what I did badly. And inside of that, it really was, I hadn't got to a point going, well, what do I want my role to be? And how much longer can I do this for before I'm going to need the next evolution of myself? I just went, I can't do this. I'm out, right? But what I would want to have someone to have asked me is, well, what would you prefer to be doing? Like, what parts do you want to be doing, and how do we align the operation, i.e. the business, to make that happen? to roll that out. And so this is what I was able to see from outside, looking back at my own experience and my own business. And I think that just in that time, knowing what I know about myself and knowing I'm quite an emotionally driven, passionate person. So where I have in the past dusted my hands off and burn a bridge, maybe, I kind of probably burned the bridge a little bit too early on that one, but could have just kind of just stepped away and had a look if there was another path, but I didn't. So then when I kind of I did have to do some serious nervous system work and a lot of growth in that 12 months that I had off. But after that time, I then went in, started having coffees with, those same businesses that I had interviewed. So the people that had become my contacts and my network from interviewing them over the years, and kind of sat with them and coffee, and they were saying the same things, right? They were experiencing the same thing. I just feel like I'm carrying this on my own. I have this team. I have a team of people. The business works. The people sort of work. Like, what are we missing? And so I studied human behaviour as part of my personal development as well, and done eDisc. So I like to look at people's kind of behavioural styles, and I can see the founder's behavioural style. I'm like, well, this is kind of the team that we need to be doing, but what else? What are they doing, and how are they supporting you? So I started going into these businesses and just really looking at that environment and going, well, what stays? Like, if you're running this business that is great for you and you're not feeling like you're carrying alone, what stays and what goes? Right? So this is this first simple thing that I want to do with all founders and leaders, and going, what stays and goes? Because once we can understand that, then you can understand, Pete, going back to what you talked about, where you're getting in your own way and where it's time to leave. Now, some people go, I want to stay, but I just want to do these parts. And people are like, I actually don't want to be involved like you. I'd rather just kind of step out and let someone else come in. Or I just don't want to be involved in these parts. I want to have strategy. Or I want to pivot and grow another arm over here, but I can't do that while I'm doing this. So that kind of understanding of what we want the end goal to be supports the alignment, or the definition first, and then the alignments of those performance goals, which then embeds the accountability and culture structures that need to be in place for you to be able to step away. But coming back to that first question, I think it's like, well, when do you know? I think you just know when things don't feel right, Pete.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't feel right. I'm slogging my guts out, or I'm just not getting where I want to be, or I don't have the passion anymore, or I've got this team, I've got a business, it works, the people sort of work. I feel like I'm carrying and having to think about things that other people could be thinking about. We're not hitting, our straps where we want to be. It's just that niggling if it's not right.
I think there's just something about you talk a lot, performance and accountability partner. Now, having that nice, clear role and not being alone on this journey. And again, I'll come back to my own situation. Being a victim of your own success and taking the business to a point of into uncharted waters, into areas of growth and complexity that you've never been exposed to before. So who is supporting you on that journey in terms of not only picking the right things to say yes to, importantly picking the right things to say no to, but again, accountability to the plan. And for me, being a butterfly chasing scatterbrain that I am, and this is where I've just loved, working with Ed, is who is just that speaking board sometimes, if I just need to talk this out with somebody. I want to go through a couple of your sort of core pillars that you go through when looking at restructuring a business. In my words, it's there is no people problem until you fix a process problem. Then it becomes a performance appraisal problem. In your words, performance is all about a system, not a personality. How do we play the ball, not the man, to use that term when we're looking at the systems and processes in a business?
So this is where I love netball for actually being the identity or the metaphor for a really great culture. So those of you who are listening that don't know netball, go get schooled up, please, because it's it's the highest played female sport in the country, in Australia. But also there's defined thirds of the court, there's defined circles, that we are very good-looking and smart individuals, but we're not that bright, so we wear bibs to even remind us and our teammates when it's our time to stop and when it's your time to step up, right? So in that, the game of netball can happen regardless of who's wearing that bib. How smoothly that ball moves from one end of the court to the other, however, does then become to be a person issue, right? Not everyone plays for Australia. The reason is because that player didn't perform. Not everyone performs to the level that's required. So first of all, to be able to even attract the people that you need to perform in the wing attack bib, we have to be really, really thorough and very clear in articulating what we need from that wing attack. So in this court, because a great wing attack could be many different things to many different teams. It could be someone who hits the circle hardest. It could be someone who gets the ball off the centre court every time. Someone who can throw the ball from the centre court, lob it straight into the goal shooter. Like, what is required at any given time by a team is different for every one of those wing attacks, right? So we need to define what it is and articulate what it is for that wing attack to be the best and to perform the best. So that at the beginning is a systems. It is a system thing, right? Like we have to articulate and define what it means to have someone great doing that job. Because if we don't first define and articulate, we're just leaving them run around. We haven't even given them a bib. We're just saying you're part of the team. Well, what position am I playing? Like, what thirds can I run in? Do I shoot or do I just pass the ball in? Right? So we
freedom
have to...
within boundaries.
Freedom within boundaries, right? So the wing attack, she can dodge, she can pivot, she can jump. They're all the things that she can do in making the ball go from one end of the court to the other. But unless we give her the boundaries of where you can jump, pivot, turn, throw, etc., roll, then it's very hard for her to show off or to perform at her highest because she doesn't know what a team performance looks like. Did I just answer your question, or did I go off in a totally netball-related
this is good.
No,
this is good. No, because it's all about empowering the person to succeed within the system. Because for me, again, freedom within boundaries. There's no people problem until you find a process problem. I really think that the people in our businesses and the people that work with us generally are trying to do the right thing.
Right.
I don't think people are malicious. And when people come up short, or we really need to reflect and think, well, have I empowered them with the right process or structure or system to be their best? If you don't have it, don't expect it.
What's my responsibility in their performance? I agree with you, Pete. I want to believe that every person who comes into your workplace has a desire to be there, and that they want to achieve. They want to achieve something. Now, their level of achievement, and this is where our step up or step out becomes incredibly important, because as we are stabilising performance and lifting standards inside of the organisation to take the business to its potential, there are going to be people who were great wing attacks in that team. But now we've lifted up to a state team instead of Saturday netball team, and we need a different thing from them. And whether they can
this is tough.
Whether they can perform from a functional competency or a behavioural competency, they're the two key things that we have to begin to look at as we are asking them to step up or step out. Now, if they do not have functional and behavioural, it is our responsibility to say, are we willing to support them and coach them to behavioural competency, to the standards of which we expect inside of our culture? Or do we just go, I think that this is where we're at now. We're going to get that person to a place where they're willing to step up or step out, and then we'll bring in the next person that has that higher level of experience. There are tantrums that happen, right, when we put standards down. Those of you who have children, we understand.
No. I want to say something after you.
Oh, but those standards are really important, because when you begin to change them, there will be, the reason this happens is because the leader begins to change and they begin to hold people to account. I'm kind of like come in as the external head of standards, right? So it's like I'm going to set them here, but we're going to set everything up so it's a handball off. And as long as you follow that system and still have the outside, that conversation, the soundboarding, I've done the system, but it's not working. Okay, then we need to tweak it here. Perhaps as a communication issue, articulation issue. Do we not give them enough notice? Like, what's the human aspect of that there? Because one of my clients recently had, within 5 weeks of me popping in as the embedded performance and accountability person for them, within 5 weeks, his first senior person left. He was on 140 grand salary. He wasn't completing jobs. This was in the construction industry. He wasn't completing his job. He wasn't finishing the paperwork. He wasn't making it so that the company could get, paid on time. When those standards were called in over and over again, and the bar was there, he just said, this is how to hard him out, right? Another 3 weeks later, same thing happened with the business manager, because they were also being asked to perform to a standard and someone was holding them to that. Now, that was in a realisation of 20K a month. And what we also were able to see in that is the personalities that were in those jobs were wrong. This leader, like you, likes to chase the next big thing, visionary, strategic thinking, great commercial development, had no doers. These were other people who were also like, oh, these are the systems we need. We're going to talk about everything, but no one's going to do anything. So not only have we realised a saving in the business, but we're now able to recreate a team that supports the owner, like filled with doers, and we can be really clear on what the standards are for those people. But it happens every time.
Moment. If I can just pick at that moment just a little bit there. You said recreate a team. Now, this is going to be really challenging for people, especially for people who have maybe crossed, let's just say you're up into that $3 to $5 million threshold, and the team that you had was great for them, but are they the team you need for the $10 million threshold? And this is not threshold, next milestone. How challenging is it for leaders to be able to take their own blinkers off about the potential, the capacity, and the performance of long-time team members?
Incredibly challenging, Peter. It's so hard because these leaders have often had these people on a path of loyalty with them and they've built something together. But if that leader in any way, or the business owner, founder, managing director, is feeling resentment toward that person that is still on that path with them because they are not able to show up how they want them to, the relationship's already dead, right? Yeah. It's dead in terms of, I can't even feel like, I'm not looking forward to, every time I see your name in my calendar, I'm like, God, every time I ask, does that get done? I get an eye roll. Where am I supposed to fit that in? That's a really challenging experience. And so my job then at that point is really just to identify, okay, well, can we coach them to where they want to be? And if we support them by, raising them up and going, yep, they are the person, then otherwise we do have to look at redeploying them, depending on how big the organisation is, and we would engage, HR, we have to do this part all by the books. But where we get to with this sort of stuff is it's kind of redeploy or recreate. Now, if we can redeploy them into something else that's a sideways move and the business can still cash flow that, then do that. And that person will stay for life, or they'll go, this is not what I signed up for, I'm out, right? So either way, you're giving an opportunity to step up or step out, because if you don't as a leader and if you don't step up, you're going to just be continually kind of feeling like they're failing. And if you feel like they're failing, there's a huge chance that person also feels like they're failing. And that's just not a relationship that anyone wants to be in, because if we go back to that idea of everyone wants to feel like they're achieving, and I haven't walked into, there's very few people that I have met that go, I'm here to fail.
I love that. Accountability and standards it just keeps resonating back and back in my ears. And as the business grows and matures, the game changes. You know, it's a bigger game. It's a more important game potentially. There's more on the line potentially. You know, and as the owner, founder, leader, ultimately the buck's going to stop back with you regardless. So I'm always fascinated about the blend of teams and talent, and you know, as again the business momentum changes, situation changes, how are we putting the best people into the business? And if the best people are already in our team, how are we identifying them and nurturing them and creating them across? But also, how do we let the business breathe to its full potential? You know, I just want to share before we wrap up, you know, because I love talking to you. I could talk about this stuff all day. And again, I say this nearly every pod. It's a very gratuitous, you know, session for me because I love learning about this stuff. But one of the things that I always love from one of your catchphrases is accountability is kind. Even though, you know, it might be hard to hear it, but accountability is kind. Talk about that.
One of my mentors very, very early on taught me a saying around nice, and it was that nothing in me cares enough. So people who are nice, it's actually that there's nothing in me cares enough to actually tell you the truth.
Hang on a sec. I just want to unpack that. Can you say it one more time for the slow people?
I'm gonna come back to it in a second.
Okay.
Because especially for women, there's a huge movement, and there's books out there. Nice girls don't get the corner office, and nice girls come last. Right? It's exactly the same for men, by the way. It's just that there's not a movement there because it hasn't been so ingrained for you to just stay quiet. So, what is nice? Okay, so my mentor once told me that nice stands for nothing in me cares enough. Nice.
To make a stand.
To make a stand, to tell you the truth, to be honest, right? So if I am allowing you as my team member to continue to fail, to continue to not meet the deadlines that we've put on, to continue to not show up behaviorally as someone at your level is expected to, competently.
Yep.
For me to
and I'm
sit
being
back,
nice to you.
I'm being nice. Yeah, no, it's great. It's like, you know, yeah, no, I'm sure it was just a tough day, or oh, it's just not our year, or like all these other reasons. That's me being nice, but it's not being kind. Because for me to go, okay, Peter, well, why haven't we met that deadline? What else has blocked you? Oh, well, I had this other thing in there. Okay, so why wasn't Jimmy taking on that task? That's part of his job role. Oh, well, because he, blah, blah. Okay, so my accountability here is not like to just go, well, that shit, get it done, it's okay. Well, what's the problem as to why it hasn't got done? And now I have to help you work out how it becomes, how we get it done. And if that means pushing things down or that means dropping things off, my job is to keep you on task so that you can achieve. So accountability is kind because I want you to achieve. I don't want you to fail. If I'm nice, you'll just keep failing.
Sometimes we need to hear a bit of short-term pain to get a bit of long-term gain. You know, if nothing changes kind of thing. So who is actually talking to us and being our sounding board, you know, about what we're doing?
I don't believe in having conflict in terms of things in the office, in the workplace. A lot of my clients will say, oh, well, I haven't brought that up because I just don't like conflict. And I'm like, it's not conflict, it's just honesty. When you have an honest conversation and you're coming at it with honest, you're not looking to fight, you're looking to understand, right? You're looking to understand what has gone wrong. You're looking to understand what is blocking their performance. You're looking to understand what has stopped you from reaching that particular target that we had. When we come at it with an honesty, which is a maturity that requires self-growth potential, and we've talked a lot about that idea of potential now, our own personal potential, that's where we have to step up. And so when I'm thinking about, when I'm working with leaders, it's like, well, are you willing to step up to be the most mature version of yourself and be who these people need? Or are you just wanting to be who you are? You want to be who you are, and Pete, you've gone, I want to be who I am. Someone else is way better at doing that. I want to go chase butterflies. I'm going to leave this in your hands, and we're just going to, like, I'm going to guide this thing to where it needs to go, but you're going to just do it, and I'm going to have hands off. Perfect. You want to be who you are. If you didn't, we would go, okay, Pete, so what do these people who are working under you need from you? Like, what do they need from you to get this job done? And so that's where our performance and accountability comes into place. And that is all the work that, you know, after we've kind of aligned our operation, we've worked out our leadership structures, we've got our agility focus, we know what the milestones are that everyone's working to, we've got our reporting matrix in place. Then it just becomes a matter of like, well, if these things aren't happening, we have to up level and become the person that our leader or our manager needs, as in understanding. We need to understand more and ask more questions and coach them.
Yeah, look, this is so powerful for me, and you know the difference between nice and kind. You know, I've never really thought about it that way, and I love the little acronym. Because as military people as well, we are used to, within our military environment, to having that culture of feedback, about having, you know, learning loops and feedback loops and getting it regular and often all the time. And again, I just think that sometimes we can become, I don't want to say forest for the trees, but we can become victims of our own success with our own egos, about not really understanding, well, who am I being accountable to now? And this is where I come back to coaching. Business performance is such a critical path, you know, to taking us through the next chapter of where we want to be. You know, in the military, we go through courses, we go through training, we go through promotion programs. There's all of this structure there to take us to the next level, to challenge us to the next level. In business, we are generally in the business so regularly and so often. Then what are those professional development milestones that are grabbing us by the collar and dragging us forward? And unless we invest in them ourselves, unless we look at coaching, and unless we look at courses, unless we look at getting people that have been there and done that and take us along the journey, then be prepared to be enclosed by your own ceiling of your own success.
The really interesting thing about military as well is that when we're thinking about standards, Pete, your standards were predefined, right? So to reach the next level, it was predefined what you know, to go from captain to, is it major is the next one? Is it lieutenant? I'm not sure.
Yep. I never made it there. But, yeah.
so to get to that, to climb the ranks, it's predefined, right? Like there's usually a number of years that you have to have served, and then two, there's areas that you have to have done in, and courses and stuff like that, as exactly what you said. When you come out and you're on your own, you have to be the definer of the standards.
Yeah.
And where that's really challenging, and I was just speaking to a veteran-owned business yesterday, who is a multi-director operation as well. That's some of the specialty that I work with, is where there's many people at the top. But multi-directors in that, when one person would drop the ball, there was no accountability for that person, because they were just using their military culture or military ingrained kind of thinking, and it was like, so we'll just pick it up and carry it for you. But that meant that's then taking them away from their own defined jobs and targets. But the standard isn't there, because the standard that they're living by is still, well, we just get in and we just get it done, because that's our military standard, right? Like someone drops the ball, we pick you up and we carry you to the end. That standard doesn't necessarily work inside of the workplace. Yes, we want someone who's going to, if your mate drops the ball, we want you to be able to pick it up and take it forward with them, but we want to know why they dropped the ball and help them not do it again. Right? It's not just a cultural awareness, a thing that we do where we allow you to consistently drop the ball and still get to play.
Yeah. I want to wrap and get your thoughts about the exit and preparing for the exit, because this is where I think that a lot of successful business owners maybe just not see or not start planning for what's next. So again, the step up or step out, I've very lucky that I have been able to step out of that business. And ultimately, I really feel that as business owners, we've got to start protecting our business's assets, not just income. okay, yes, it's great to get an income. Yes, it's you earn your money and this and that and whatever. But ultimately seeing that thing as an asset means that it is not you, that you one day it can run without you. How do you go into a business owner like that and really convert their mindset from being this business as an income source to an asset?
Great question. And the idea of exiting again comes back to our earlier conversation around defining what the end goal is. So for some people who don't want it to be end goal, that's fine. We're going to upskill them and get them to step up to where they want to be. For those who want to step out, we need to consider, well, what are the things that are currently, on their plate, and then what actually makes that possible for them, like what's the outcome of those things that they're responsible for. So as soon as I can identify what the outcome is that of the things that they're responsible for, we can then begin to see how someone else could fill the role, right? Because once we understand what the outcome is, we can create targets and we can create performance indicators, and therefore that then becomes then we can find the person to fill the seat. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, who's it's a worldwide phenomenon. I'm going to say it here for the first time, Pete, but he got it wrong. He talks about getting the right people in and then putting them in the right seats. Most businesses of the under 25, kind of under 20 million mark, don't have the luxury to just go out and hire good people. You need to first work out what the seats are. So if you want to exit, we need to work out, well, what are the seats? In order for the outcomes that you are presently responsible for to be still finished and completed, what would that look like? What would this person have to do? And then we really have to kind of work on that. So if I showed that to you, Pete, you could go, oh, okay, well, I'm responsible for commercial development, for I've got to bring in the customers, and I have the initial meetings with them, and then I kind of just see how the project's going, and I manage the budget. Okay, well, these are all tasks, right? So depending on how much you want to pay to get someone in, they're just tasks. And what the outcome of those tasks, they're just outcomes, right? So we just need to find what the outcomes are, because then we can create a performance system. And then it just becomes about interviewing and getting the right person into the role. But first of all, we had to create the seat, because A-team players and high performers want to know what it looks like to achieve. So I could not go into something and like even somebody will say, oh, could you send me a quote for this? And I'm like, well, I don't know what you wanted to achieve. So until we've had that conversation, there's no use me telling you, like giving you a quote. So let's have a conversation about what you want to achieve, because I'm a high performer. I want to know, how do I make this, how do I be successful in this relationship? So for someone to exit, they need to know what it would look like. What are all the stuff what are the outcomes that they're actually doing right now? And then from there, it's looking at, well, how quickly can we offload that? And what do we need, who needs to be responsible for those things? And how much, what do you want the exit to look like?
Yeah, I just want to encourage people to think about that in terms of the exit. Like if you're in your 30s and 40s and whatever, you got plenty of time. I've just hit 50, so I've still got heaps of time within the business, but what do I want out of it? And do I want this thing to be a legacy for my generational income for my kids? And ultimately for me, again, the essence of it being an asset is that one day it will grow wealth without me. And so that's for people. And if you're stuck in the grind of the business every single day, if you're the blockage and you're just struggling to keep up with the operational cycle or the current operations of your business, how are you ever going to get out? And this is where performance and business performance and accountability partners is so important, because they can be that mirror, they can be that guidance or that point of reflection to say, well, where are you going and why? And even just that first statement, where are you going and why? And then let's see what's happening with the business to achieve that.
Yeah, well, so often we apply step up, step out to the team, as in performance. But, as you and I have spoken about before, it does apply to the founder as well. What's your role in this? Are you going to step out or are you going to step out?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave that as a great final note. What are you going to do as a business owner? Are you going to step up and let this thing flourish to the potential that it could be, and let it probably feed you with the financial opportunities that a business that flourishing can do. And I'm not saying that you don't do what you love. You're the business owner. You get to choose whether you stay in it or not. But I think we also just need to reflect on, if we are staying in it, what's the cost? Not only to ourselves, but to our families, to our health, and what is this thing that, we go into business with a purpose of passion. We love what we're doing, but ultimately, what are we going to do? We're going to step up or step out of it. And the other thing I'll say is there's some things in life that I don't believe can just be learned, or not successfully anyway. So for example, you never played golf before, you go out there and you're going to try and hit golf balls. It's just not going to work your first time out. It's impossible. You want to go skiing for the first time. There's some fundamental rules of skiing that are against what we believe. You've got to lean away from the mountain, not into the mountain. But who's teaching you this stuff? And business is no different. So wherever you are on your business journey, don't be too proud. Don't be afraid to reach out. Who's going to be there to help you and guide you along? And I'm really excited to have, both you and Ed as part of the community, and really look forward to working with, the Business League and yourselves individually to give our community the guidance that they're looking for.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Pete. And I am often asked by people I'm working with when they're in recruitment situations, who are the best candidates? And my answers are always former military and athletes, because they come with a mindset and a discipline, and actually an ability to lean in, as well as solve problems and make things happen.
Look, Beck, thank you so much for your time today. Again, I always feel this is very self-gratuitous, because I get to spend this time on the pod, talking with amazing people.
Dude,
so,
that's why
look, if you're
interviews over years with all of the people,
I love it. I love it. So, look, if you're a business owner out there and you're feeling these same kind of pressures, you're feeling, your own glass ceilings, you're feeling that lack of support, then, reach out to us, and, we can put you in touch with Rebecca. Otherwise, you can get, she's on LinkedIn, she's everywhere. It's not hard to find us. So, Rebecca, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Pete. It was an absolute pleasure. Always fun chats.
Done. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it there. My name's Pete Liston. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Business Community Podcast with Rebecca Plant. Out.